Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Game Changer. I'm Maryam Zia. Tonight, our spotlight is on Gaza conflict, where, of course, Israeli aggression has led to a call by Organization of Islamic Cooperation of course, for unconditional ceasefire in Gaza. When we talk about this extraordinary session of OIC that was held in Istanbul, of course, all the information ministers of member countries called for this ceasefire in Gaza against the Israeli aggression. And when we look back, previously on January 26, ICJ also called for cessation of Israeli aggression and, of course, cessation of genocide that is being committed by Israel in Gaza. But when we look at the situation on ground, situation in Gaza, unfortunately, the aggression continues, and of course, almost 90% of population in Gaza is displaced today, and of course, 1% of population has been killed, which means that around nearly 30,000 people have been killed so far, and majority of these people includes children and women. In today's program, we will be talking about the calls for action by different international organizations, the protests that are happening across the world against this Israeli aggression, and of course the actions that are being taken at ICJ. We witnessed that yesterday was the last day of hearing at ICJ against a case that was of course put forward by South Africa as well, but it will take time when we look at of course the decision of this ICJ, what holds in future for the Gazans. We will be exploring in today's program, and what needs to be done when we look at the calls for action in Gaza. We will be talking all about this in today's program. To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by senior analyst Mr. Naveed Aman Khan. Welcome to the program. And we are also joined online by Dr. Hasnain Javed, who is senior analyst. Welcome to the program. Of course, Mr. Naveed, when we look at this of course conflict unfolding before our eyes and the genocide that we are witnessing in 21st century, how do you see this recent of course call for unconditional ceasefire by OIC, and how this call for action is different from the previous calls by the Muslim communities or Muslim countries?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maryam, in fact, it's a great tragedy of 21st century. We have been observing that Israel has been attacking Palestine since October 2023, and the war has entered in 5th month. As you have earlier mentioned, that more than 30,000 innocent Palestinians are martyred, and over 70,000 are seriously injured. And among those 70,000, most of them are, disabled and waiting for their treatment and first aid, which is not even available for them from any part of the country of Palestine. The entire world has been doing in good favor of the injured. The injured have been taken to UAE and any other parts of the region, but it was not enough. The first aid or the food or the necessities of life should have been provided to them. Now coming to your question, in fact, since October 7, 2023, the world has been trying its level best to halt the bombardment of Israel on Palestine, but could not get successful. The Muslim community, the regional countries, or the OIC, Arab League, African Union, UN, all the forums, they tried a bit, but they could not get that relief which was the need of the time. I think it was a matter of will. The will of America makes difference. It is very important that America play its very vital and pivotal role for this solution
Right,
of the issue.
right. We will be talking about role of US as well and how we are witnessing a shift in Biden administration's policy towards Gaza in recent days. But Dr. Hasnain, when we talk about this, of course, specific development of OIC calling for action and of course unconditional ceasefire in Gaza, what do you make of it? And also I want you to comment on of course the misinformation campaign that is being of course disseminated by Israel and the counter strategy, media strategy being proposed by OIC. What do you make of all this situation?
Yeah, see, first of all, OIC calls for unconditional ceasefire to prevent the further loss of the life in Gaza. And they have, tells the whole media, and they call up the whole media, and they have tell the truth, and they ask them to go and visit the Gaza, where the death toll is increased by the 30,000, and including over 10,000 minors, and over 60,000 injured, 7,000 are missing under the rubble, and the totaling over 90,000 casualties since the war began. So they have to report in the whole of the media. So all we can do is OIC that we can create the media group in all of the Islamic countries. But the most important thing is the Israeli force detained Palestine across the occupied West Bank, and they create the strategy for Israeli war on the Gaza has pushed 85% of the territory's population into the internal displacement amid acute shortage of food, clean water, and medicine, while 60% of the enclave infrastructure has been damaged or destroyed, according to the UN. And they also ask the whole of the media team, and then they give the orientation to the whole of the media that how the Israelis are doing that genocide in Gaza. And the Israel has bombed hundreds of the cultural and heritage sites in Gaza. So the protest on the street of Israel is very much important in that way.
Right, right. Yeah. Rightly pointed out. Of course, these key regional players have an important say when we talk about the regional matters. And of course, there are apprehensions that now this conflict is spreading to the neighboring countries like Lebanon as well. What do you make of that situation? And of course, Israeli aggression is expanding to the whole region. So is this something that these leaders anticipated in the beginning, and do you think that OIC can do something about it?
See, what OIC can do is this only that, because see, America says that on the humanitarian ground, just the ceasefire in the month of Ramadan and the Eid. Is that the statement? Do you really think that it is the only statement that they just have to ceasefire on the month of Ramadan, and after that they start the killing again? Is that the way? Now, what about the British? What about the what about the Britain? What about the other countries? What about the India? What about on the humanitarian grounds? So these powerful countries must have to decided their fate and the fate of the Gaza and fate of the Al-Quds and Al-Sharif. So Netanyahu action plan, we have to check and balance the way the Middle East and the all OIC countries, putting all their efforts, and how the Netanyahu action plan. Alongside the truce or peace talk, Netanyahu action do not reflect any intention of stopping the Gaza genocide. The view in the Washington is that Netanyahu is keeping his option open, weighing between the hostage and negotiation and the assault on Rafah, and will only choose between them at the last days. So Netanyahu has convened the Israeli war cabinet to discuss and the next step. He's just not stopping on the war. He is going for the next step in the negotiation for the release of our hostage and the elimination of other things. They are putting the regional. See, we have nothing to do with the Hamas. We have nothing to do with the other things. This is a matter of humanitarian thing. This is why they are taking the other countries, people. There is nothing to do with the Hezbollah. There is nothing to do with the Hamas. If they have the problem with the Hamas and Hezbollah, they can do by themselves. But the important thing is the Gazan people have nothing to do with it. Here, Egypt and the eastern belt and the western bank, they must have to give escape, and they have to facilitate the Gazan people. Where is the Egyptian people? So that means the America will is not there. So that's why the
Right,
Egypt
right,
cannot
right.
help
Of
them,
course,
even
of
in
course.
the back
Let
office.
me, Dr. Sen, let me take the same point to, of course, the studios. Mr. Naveed, when we talk about, of course, this continuing Israeli aggression, and that too in the backdrop of the recent ICJ hearings. Of course, we know that ICJ provided six provisional measures that were, of course, to be implemented by Israel. So in the backdrop of all this context, and of course Israel was to submit a report before ICJ, which it submitted before the deadline yesterday at Monday evening. So what do you think that, do you think that of course UN or other international players are going to be putting some sanctions on Israel, because they are still committing a genocide? And of course one of the provisional measures was to stop killings on ground in Gaza.
Definitely, Maryam. The sanctions should be enforced on Israel, because whenever sanctions are enforced by West or America. Wherever America wants to enforce sanctions, yes, America goes for it. And America has not yet enforced any sort of sanction on Israel regarding the genocide issue or bombardment on Palestine, or killing of the innocent Palestinians, or depriving innocent Palestinians of their homeland.
US has been vetoing, of course, any action against Israel.
Every action
Right.
which is in favor of Palestine is not being accepted by America. And any action which goes in the favor of Israel is being, supported by America and Great Britain in particular. So unless America and Great Britain move forward and enforce any sort of sanctions on Israel and provide that relief to the Palestinians, this issue will not be resolved. And the international community should continue enhancing pressure on America, on Israel, and on the regional role players as well. The regional role players, the Egypt, Lebanon, Jordan, Syria are also very important. The war from Palestine has spilled over to Lebanon, Syria, and Egypt. As the war is spilling over, Israeli attacks are also expanding on the regional countries as well, which is worsening the situation in the Middle East. It's not the solution of the issue that you halt or you go for a temporary ceasefire in the war during the month of Ramadan. We now need to have a permanent ceasefire and find that solution of the issue permanently during this ceasefire, whether it be during the month of Ramadan or even goes further after Eid. Unless we catch this moment, we cannot get out of this situation. So the sooner the better.
Right. So, Dr. Sen, of course, when we talk about the conflict in the neighboring countries as well, how, of course, how fearsome is it for the regional stability? Of course, we know that expansion and Israeli aggression is expanding each day on the neighboring countries. So, how worried should these Arab leaders be, and what needs to be done?
Very permanent and very daring question, indeed. Egypt must have to put up their ears up. All of the Arab, the Yemen and the Houthis, they must have to trickle down, and the OIC must have to call and let them talk and talk them that this is just not now here. They will expand, and if they expand, where we will be. So till now, nobody is asking for the sanctions, and even America is just requesting them. They are not putting any sanctions because they can't. Because Rockefeller or the Rothschilds are coming from all of the business community, because 33 trillion of the debt is under America is under the debt, financial debt, and the financial debt is again belongs to somehow the Israelis, the big business empires. As I see the global view on the ceasefire, it is again the same. They are not taking as serious. At the same time as the peace talks were begun, held in the Paris diplomatic negotiation have been taking place on the UN, and UN is doing nothing, as they are just calling up in the New York as a summit. On Tuesday, US voted a security ceasefire resolution on the UN Security Council for the third time. Then is the US circulated an alternative resolution calling for the temporary ceasefire, not happening, not done as soon as a practicability. And the block on any Israel attack on Rafah, that resolution has since been discussed behind the scene and export from the council member mission, but it also not clear whether it will be introduced formally or not.
Dr. Hasnain, at the same time, what do you make of course, Israel's decision to ignore of course, provisional measures, 6 provisional measures that were to be implemented as instructed by ICJ? What do you make of all that? Do you think that that could be a ground for putting embargo or putting sanctions on Israel?
This is very much important. So I have really respect for the South Africa. They have put this case onto the ICJ, International Court of Justice on Palestine. So now the ICJ concluded in its 6th day of hearing on Israel occupation of the Palestinian territories with the countries from the global South, and largely expressed the support of the Palestine self-determination and criticizing Israel decades-old military occupation. And the International Court of Justice is holding public hearing on Israel occupation of the Palestinian territories, and hearing focused on the half century of occupation, including East Jerusalem and the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. So, hearing our response to an advisory opinion request by the United Nations General Assembly in December 22, but nothing happened so far, but it is moving on to the next step. The advisory opinion asks the ICJ how Israel policies and practice in the occupied Palestinian territory affect the legal status of occupation. Now, this is very much important. So, the ICJ 15 judges panel is also asked to review Israel's occupation and settlement and annexation. But the ICJ ruled on January 26, 2024, an interim basis biases in the genocide case. The ruling include 6 provisional measures, including the Israel must stop participating in an act under the Genocide Convention. Very important, very daring. I really appreciate International Court of Justice. Israel must prevent and punish public and direct sentiment
right,
to
but
genocide.
At the same time, Dr. Hasnain, Israel chose to ignore these provisional measures, and as per reports, of course, Israel was to submit a 1-month report, and 1 month completed yesterday. Israel also submitted this report. Do you think that, of course, Israel since failed to implement these measures, of course, Israeli aggression continues, and of course there are hurdles on ground in aid delivery as well. Do you think that UN or other countries like African Union are going to be putting more pressure on Israel, and of course to isolate Israel on international stage?
Maryam, all the rulings by IGC, you have seen that. I have mentioned all the clauses. They says that, UN says that, OIC says everything. I mean, they wanted to do that. But the real solution is they have to, really must have to cut their relationship with Israel.
Mr. Naveed, when we talk about these developments, and also we know that one of the recent ICJ ruling stopped Netherlands, when we talk about Netherlands case and sending F-15s to Israel, so it was stopped from doing that. So that is maybe a precedent of putting Israel in isolation. But moving forward, especially when we talk about the voices that are coming from Gaza, of course, journalists are playing an important role. And it is unprecedented, the number of journalists that are being killed in Gaza. What do you make of this situation, and are the international laws and rules not applied on Israel? Do you think any action could be taken against Israel on this matter?
Maryam, all the rules are applied on every country. Israel has no exception. One thing is very important, and that is the case which South Africa has pleaded in favor of Palestine and against Israel in International Court of Justice very successfully. And hats off to South Africa, and I salute South Africa for successfully taking that case in the International Court of Justice. And the other countries, regional countries or the continental countries, the European countries should enhance pressure on European Union, African countries in African Union, and the Arab countries on Arab League, and the Muslim countries on OIC, and on UN. In all these forums, the concerned countries should enhance pressure on those forums regarding pressure on Israel for any sort of legal way or the diplomatic way or even the political way. As we have earlier discussed about that case of Netherlands, it worked. So it means it will work and it can work. So what we need to do, the entire international world need to enhance that sort of pressure which worked in the case of Netherlands.
Right, but at the same time, Mr. Naveed, when we look at the recent development that, of course, UN aid agencies are being stopped from delivering aid trucks into Gaza. Of course, some of the aid is being, of course, airdropped in the recent days as well. But that amount is very negligible. And of course, now there are, of course, apprehensions and fears among UN agencies as well that more people might die from starvation, hunger, famine, rather than these Israeli aggressions. So what needs to be done for smooth, of course, delivery of aid to those people that are in need, because, of course, those refugee camps are also being bombed?
Maryam, on both ways we need to work, the world need to work. One, to continue supplying that aid to the Palestinians, whether it be medical aid or the food or other necessities of life. Number two, all the regional countries in particular and the rest of the world should continue pressurizing America and Israel for ceasefire, permanent ceasefire. If there is no ceasefire, the solution will not be achieved. So the earlier the better. This is not the solution that on one side you continue a bombardment on Palestine, and on the other side you start opening one window of that aid coming towards Palestine. I mean, it is ununderstandable. So what we need to do to continue that aid to supply to the Palestine and stop that bombardment which is continuing for the last 4 or 5 months on Palestine. I mean, if it is not done, we will see a big tragedy in the region. Hardly a building is left, in its conditions.
Right.
It has turned in the debris. So the people are dying with bombardment, and people are dying with starvation. The whole, misery will be, sent to the baggage towards Israel.
Of course, and Dr. Sen, when we talk about a situation on ground, the infrastructure is, of course, damaged completely, as well as there is, of course, no civic order within Gaza. What do you make of these fears among UN officials about, of course, that starvation is going to be killing more people than the Israeli aggression? Because, of course, we know that Israel is now planning ground offensive in Rafah as well.
Yes, that's true. And what they are going to do in Rafah, I really can't even imagine. But the John Kirby, White House National Security spokesperson, he says we still would not support operations in Rafah, no matter what the time scale is. We would not support those kinds of the operation unless or until the Israeli had properly accounted for the safety and security of the more than 1 million people that are seeking the refugee down there. Same as the with the Amir of Qatar statement is very much powerful in that way. So Amir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamdan Al Thani retreated Qatar's unwavering support of the Palestine people and the just cause and significance of the Palestine unity to regain their legitimate right and primarily the right of establish their independent state of 1967 border, which is with the East Jerusalem as its capital. Now, this is the only solution they have to pick it one. The UK abstained on the Tuesday, sparing the US from the absolute isolation in the Council. UK position calling from the immediate suspension of the hostiles to allow for the negotiation on the sustainable ceasefire was closer to the line taken by the other council member than the American stance. Maryam, try to understand and also remember that we have to approach, and the Arab League and UN Council must have to approach the Rockefellers, Rothschild, and BlackRock. Once the aid is being stopped to Israel, then they can decide something. Otherwise, they will continue with the genocide and everything, whatever they want. But the Biden statement here is a little confusing. I don't understand whether it is in the favor or against. The Biden said, well, I hope by the beginning of the weekend, the end of the weekend, my national security advisor tells me that we are close. We are close. We are not done yet. My hope is by next Monday, we'll have a ceasefire. What a confused statement is being by the President of America. I don't know. Is he with the humanity, or is he against the humanity? I don't know.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Hasnain, Javed, for your valuable opinion. And of course, we will be taking a short break here, and we will be continuing after the break. Welcome back. Of course, we're talking about the conflict in Gaza and the action that needs to be taken by international community. To discuss more about it, we are now joined by former Ambassador Shahid Masroor Kiani. Welcome to the program. Ambassador Saab, when we talk about a situation in Gaza, we know about the historic stance of US and West. But now in the recent days, as the war is continuing and Israeli aggression continues, we are witnessing a shift in Biden administration's policy towards Israel, especially regarding Israeli settlements. Do you think that this is an actual policy shift on part of US?
The thing is that apart from the Israeli lobby, which is very, very strong in the United States, both within the government and in the US Congress, this issue of support to Israel at a very crucial moment when you look at what's happening in Gaza, where about 32,000 women and children have been slaughtered in Gaza. This is now a subject of debate in the election campaign between Biden and possibly it could be the what you call the Democrat and the Republican parties, each falling over each other to support Israel. Now, this is one of the prime reasons that the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is not willing to go for a ceasefire, even though if you look at it, even globally around the world, even Western countries which have been in the earlier supporting the Israelis are now asking for a ceasefire because of the brutality which the world has seen in the last now 2 months. So, but what happens is there is no shift. I can assure you, President Biden has been in the last many decades one of the presidents who has been more supportive of Israel than others. Because if not for the Biden administration, the Israelis would have gone for a ceasefire. A full support given to them now. And what's happening now is the Israeli Prime Minister is all along, he will continue this war till the elections in November, because if Trump comes as the president, he is more pro-Israeli than anybody. If you recall, during his tenure, few of the very important Arab Gulf countries had established diplomatic relations with Israel. So
And Abraham Accords were also, of course, negotiated during Trump administration as well, of course. And when we talk about all these developments, we earlier talked in the program about, of course, expansion of conflict in the neighboring countries as well. What do you make of this situation and about its impact on stability in Middle East?
the thing is, if you look at because of this war, you have there is a very serious concern within the region that this war may engulf other countries. If you look what's happening in Yemen, the Americans and the other Western countries are attacking the Houthis who are in Yemen, because the Houthis now there is the opinion is they are now attacking ships which are passing through the Gulf. So this is something which is very dangerous. Now
Of course.
the other thing is just let me share with you the apathy is that now they are talking about the two-state solution. For the last 70 years, the two-state solution has been the bedrock, has been the most important thing which can at least bring about a stability in the Middle East. But this there is a division even within the Arab world about the support to Israel. If you look at one of the summits which took place in the OIC, 2 or 3 Arab countries did not agree to sever relations, diplomatic relations with the Israelis. So the division within the Arab world is being taken full advantage by the Israelis and by the United States. Behind the scenes, what's happening, it's anybody's guess. But the worst thing which has happened is the slaughter of the 32,000 women and children in Gaza. This is
Of
something
course.
which who's going to be answerable, who's going to answer to the slaughter.
Of course, Ambassador Saab, and of course, this humanitarian crisis that is unfolding before our eyes in Gaza is, of course, heart-wrenching. But at the same time, in your opinion, how important it is to, of course, address the root causes of this conflict, because this conflict has been, going on since decades during the British rule, and it has a history, since you pointed out about, of course, two-state resolution as well, and divide among Arab states as well. Moving forward, do you see some solution coming forward?
The thing is, the two-state solution is the only viable solution which can at least, as I said to you, it will not end the conflict, but at least bring about, as I say, the coexistence between with the Palestinians and the Israelis. But I, unfortunately, being a realist, I don't see that happening. If you look at, and the reason is the lukewarm support by the Americans to this one. There was some, earlier, many years back, the Americans were supporting the two-state solution wholeheartedly. But I don't think this is happening.
Right, but
If
at the same time, Ambassador Saab, I want you to comment on that. When we, of course, discussed about two-state solution earlier in history, whenever Gaza conflict was being discussed. But now the situation on ground is very different, where of course 90% of population is displaced in Gaza, 1% of population has already been killed, and of course around 60 to 70% of infrastructure has been damaged. So what about this two-state when there is no aid delivery and there is no infrastructure on ground? So what two-state are we talking about?
If you talk about two-state solution, another tragedy is the division between the Palestinians themselves. You have President Mahmoud Abbas on one side, and then you have the people and the leadership in Gaza. So the division between within the Palestinians is being taken full advantage by the Israelis. And who's supporting them? Who's telling these two the division? Unless the Palestinians themselves close the ranks and go for a two-state solution. At this time, with a moth-eaten, what you call the Palestinian state, which is there, headed by the Palestinian leadership, is it full advantage to the Israelis? They can live with it. And now what's happening in Gaza, where most of the population either has been killed or have been pushed to the wall. Now what's happening? The Israelis are saying they evacuate the whole of Gaza. To do what? They will destroy whatever infrastructure is left there. So who's going to go? And as far as humanitarian assistance is concerned, it's a joke. I tell you why. What humanitarian assistance for what? If the war goes on, who's going to eat? Only human being, living people eat. If you're going to kill everybody, what humanitarian assistance? I was just reading the Jordanians have been airdropping the food. For whom? The first most important thing for the Arab world and the Muslim world is to close ranks, appeal to the Americans and other Western countries to please bring an end to this war. Once the war ends, then humanitarian assistance can go. Two things cannot go together. People in Gaza are hiding somewhere. There are hardly any place for them to even hide. Where would they eat? So this is a tragedy in which we are living, and believe it or not, it is horrifying. And believe it or not, the Muslim world will have to live with this guilt of these people being killed, the division within the Arab world, and the most important tragedy, the division within the Palestinian themselves, leadership.
Right, of course, the situation is of course very dire when we talk about the humanitarian crisis, but at the same time, Mr. Naveed, we are witnessing that countries and of course worldwide there are protests in favor of people in Gaza, and of course the leaders might not be standing behind the people of Gaza, but of course common people are protesting in West, in Muslim countries as well. Do you think that is going to be impacting decisions of these leaders in coming days?
Definitely, Maryam. The protests from different countries or different communities in different countries definitely put pressure on their relevant governments, and ultimately the pressure comes up on Israel or on America as well. Now, what we need to do for Palestine, number one, we'll have to enhance the volume of that aid, which is the necessity of the Palestinians. The food items, the medical aid, number one. Number two, we need to establish one account in favor of Palestine by the Muslim countries. This is my suggestion, to establish account for the rehabilitation of the Palestinians and reconstruction of Palestine. That should be on monthly basis or yearly basis, and that fund should be utilized for the reconstruction and rehabilitation of the Palestinians, so that they could get up from that debris or this crisis or chaos situation, or
right. So the funding is a recent issue that has been raised by UNRWA as well. That is the only UN agency that has been working in Palestine. But of course, US and other countries have stopped their donations, and which is causing them to, of course, stop their actions within Gaza. And of course, starvation remains one of the key factors that is killing people in Gaza today. So do you think that OIC and of course African Union is also very active when we talk about Gaza conflict? These countries are going to be working or should be donating to UN agencies?
Definitely, they should. And they are already, but the volume is too little. So they need to enhance that volume of donations for the rehabilitation and for the reconstruction, which we have earlier discussed. It needs to be strengthened, and the volume should be enhanced, so that the entire Gaza has turned into debris. The very big amount is required for the reconstruction, and the time will be required also for the reconstruction. So the loss is very big. So the money required should be big for this, and it is not a matter of collecting money from any one country. all the Muslim countries and all the African countries, and even and the entire world should be invited to go for that contribution for that account. Number one. Number two, one thing which is also felt that because of Israeli attacks and aggression on Palestine, India gets that encouragement politically, diplomatically, and psychologically from Israel. Because of this encouragement, that pressure also is being increased on Kashmiris, and the Kashmiris will be in trouble because of this encouragement. And India,
because of the impunity that is being given to
definitely, and India has never condemned Israeli attack on Palestine, because they want to show, or they want to give gesture to the Kashmiris as well, so that they don't fight for their right of self-determination, and India wants to crush Kashmiris and is not ready to give their right of vote as well.
Of course, self-determination. So, Ambassador Sahab, looking forward, what prospects do you see for, of course, the future for Gaza, and when we talk about diplomatic solutions and a cessation of Israeli aggression?
I am honestly speaking very pessimistic, because in the last few months I have not seen any glimmer of hope for the people living in Gaza. Meaning, as I said to you, even half of the population has already died, and others are vulnerable, and there is absolutely no hope. And I tell you, there's another, as I said to you, I want to repeat this issue of the Palestinians, of this war in Gaza is now a hot issue within the U.S. presidential campaign, and there is a sizable Muslim population within the United States, who can either one of them, whoever the presidential leadership is very sad. They should have been reaching out to the Muslim population by asking the Israelis to put an end to this war. Ceasefire, end it. But that is unfortunately not happening. I don't see a ceasefire coming in the very near future. Maybe after a few months, then what will going to happen to him? As my colleague was saying, humanitarian assistance, medical assistance. Who will get it? Only people who live there, they can get it. There is now a dire need. And one last thing. There are Arab Gulf countries who have solid, economic, power, gas and oil and others. They can, put sanctions through this on Israelis, put an end to giving them this energy. And there is a possibility that on this pressure, the Israelis might come to some understanding, but I don't see this thing happening. All what I'm seeing is conferences being held, resolution being passed, but the sufferings in Gaza continue, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. Thank you very much. Sure, please go ahead.
We were talking about two-state solution, but I think Israelis are very comfortable in the state of Israel. They have no problem. So the state of Israel is intact and comfortable. We are talking about the state of Palestine. So the Palestinians are suffering. The Palestinian state is suffering. So we were talking about the one-state solution of Palestine, because the other state, Israel, is already there and they have no problem. So the solution of Palestinian state is a problem which should be resolved.
Of course.
Amicably and timely.
Of course. Thank you very much, Mr. Naveed Aman Khan, for your valuable opinion. Of course, this is a topic that we will be discussing in our upcoming programs as well. And thank you very much, Ambassador Shahid Masroor Kiani, for joining us in today's program. Of course, as we wrap up today's program, the future of Gaza remains uncertain. But our hopes and, of course, hopes are for the better future of Gazans. And, of course, our heart goes to all the people that are affected in this conflict. That's all from Game Changer tonight. Take care. Allah Hafiz.